양지 진부스던 힘이 장zon에 문음 진부가 겼다 바그라 다른 찬도 실물도 tumbadik jejanla kisham tsar mechanrawar seringi jankamsa jawar tukjishanla yilarma jime panzo jala sara de gongje topan pawar shinjilo gongje topan pawar shinjilo gongje topan pawar shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate sentient beings, please generate bodhicitta before today's teaching. You see, we have so much content to cover today. Before we begin, I want to mention that we have some books here today. Some are translations and some are commentaries. Looking at these a couple of days ago, we also had university lectures. Now we've compiled the translations, writings, and lecture recordings into these materials. These are mainly for our internal circulation. What I want to say here is this. First of all, I want to express my deep gratitude to all the staff members involved in this work. I may not mention everyone individually here, but for example, with these commentaries and such, first there's the preliminary work that needs to be done, including on-site filming, audio recording. All of these are needed. Then in the middle stage, editing and categorizing are required, as well as adding subtitles and creating transcripts. Then comes the planning and design phase, including creating the transcripts, followed by proofreading. There's a lot of textual work involved. After all this, it finally becomes a book. So this is truly a massive undertaking. On one hand, regarding what I've translated, taught, or written, I may not have that much confidence, but on the other hand, I do have some confidence because I've basically spent my entire life teaching the Dharma, and I've devoted my whole life to this. If there are mistakes, there probably aren't that many, and if it's good, well, there's nothing particularly special about it. Generally speaking, if someone is very famous, they might have one representative work in their lifetime, just one or two books would suffice. There's no need for particularly many. However, sometimes when it comes to teaching the Dharma, extensive learning, or from the perspective of our treatises, having many isn't necessarily inappropriate. So I'm neither particularly certain nor particularly negative about these books. If these books are to be passed down to the world, it might be better while I'm still around. Indeed, I can basically say over the past 30 to 40 years, my life has been devoted to whether teaching or translating all of this. The other day, I told some of my Dharma friends, these books can truly be called part of my own life because in many ways I've invested so much into them. What I want to say today is this. All the volunteers are truly not having it easy. I'm especially grateful to everyone. I also frequently pray to the Guru and the Three Jewels, giving blessings and dedications for you all, or blessings, however you want to put it. If there is any virtue in this, may all sentient beings who encounter these Dharma texts share in our collective merit. It's not just mine alone. Of course, some of the content here is actually quite good, especially what I've translated. They have been translated from Tibetan word by word, sentence by sentence. There are also the classes I've taught, including classes taught 20 years ago versus those taught now. Sometimes with social changes, the way things were expressed back then might have had some errors, but I've actually reviewed them myself. Quite a few people have worked on organizing the transcripts. According to other masters, perhaps they would list the names of volunteers clearly, saying who organized this and that transcripts, who did the typing, who did the filming, and who did the recording. But on our side, many Dharma friends don't seek fame or recognition for their merit. So basically, there are none listed. Even though there are none, we should still have a heart of gratitude. Don't just look at those transcripts later and say, this is wrong, that is wrong. Actually, there are quite a few people who nitpick, but in reality, if they did it themselves, they might do even worse. Textual work isn't that simple. And it is the same with teaching the Dharma. If you ask them to teach, they can't. But when others teach, they're quick to point fingers. So I think we should also appreciate them if you feel you've benefited even a little from these books. Then you should be grateful to them. Even if you haven't benefited from it, you shouldn't criticize them because their service is free. Actually, everyone comes here to study and practice, and they don't want to spend their time on this. But they do it for everyone's benefit. I especially want to mention this today. Many people work on our university lecture transcripts as well. Once they asked me to provide a transcript from a university lecture. I organized that Qinghai Nationalities University lecture myself, and it took me a very long time. After that, I never dared to touch it again. It seems like it's just a 1 hour lecture, but for that 1 hour lecture, I spent so much time on it afterwards. I had to review it again and again, and in the end, I lost confidence in myself. It became like that. Some books might seem like nothing much, oh, just one book, but in reality, behind each one, all of us have invested so very much. So today, I'm especially grateful because the people who worked on these transcripts, including those who organized the audio and video, some are still living, some have passed away, some are present here, some are not. But regardless, they did this with good intentions at the time. We should always make more dedications for them. I've also told the people around me, there isn't that much Dharma teaching happening now. It's hard to say because when someone is alive, people get jealous, complaining about this and that, all sorts of things. Once a person is gone, perhaps they'll be valued even more. At that time, if there are no materials, that might not be so good. So for myself, considering age and various factors, I should be prepared at all times. Otherwise, we never know when the Lord of Impermanence will come. Among people my age, some have already departed from this world. Some have problems with their eyes or various issues with different parts of their bodies. All sorts of issues appear. I don't really know about their current health conditions, but it seems that among people my age, the same age, or a bit younger, many Khenpos have reached a point where their faculties have declined so much that even if they wanted to teach the Dharma or do anything, they simply can't. So I'm also preparing at all times. Perhaps some of our textual materials, indeed, things have happened before. If they've happened, then let's record them in writing. Even if there's no benefit to sentient beings, there shouldn't be any harm. But it's hard to say. In the future, if it becomes like certain special errors that have appeared in the past, perhaps everyone will have something to criticize, who knows. But regardless, in my lifetime, this is something that has happened. So from my perspective, today I want to express my gratitude once again to all who have contributed in this regard. Except for praising them verbally, I haven't really done anything for them, and I haven't privately repaid their kindness either. Since we have quite a few volunteers, if I treated one person specially, it might not be fair to others. So basically, if you want to do it, go ahead and do it. I probably don't even say thank you. Someone like that in today's world is pretty cold, I guess, kind of cool, right? Well, we'll see how things go. Things will be like this in the future too. This is what I wanted to say about the Dharma text. Some people just arrived, so I wanted to mention this to everyone. Please take this down, otherwise it's too much. The color is a bit, this is too white, which makes me look a bit dark. You know about strong light, right? All right. Now I'll begin to teach Sutra of Great Liberation. Yesterday we discussed the parable of the wealthy family's son. It was said that when the Buddha is present in the world, generally speaking, creating negative karma, slandering the true Dharma, or committing the 5 acts of immediate retribution wouldn't happen. We talked about this yesterday. For example, when the father is present, generally speaking, his son wouldn't be that rebellious. We can see this in the world. Moreover, some might think, well, during the Buddha's time, there were people like Devadatta and the group of 6 monks who committed all kinds of evil. But why was this? Since the Buddha was present at that time, if he was there, why did those retinue members appear? From a certain perspective, those can be said to be provisional teachings. For example, Devadatta, as we discussed when teaching the Lotus Sutra before, many sutras also mention the future prophecy. In reality, his evil actions at that time were merely appearances, and the same is true for the group of 6 monks. At that time in Buddhism, they were famous for being quite mischievous monastics, but later some Mahayana sutras say they weren't actually that bad. In reality, their conduct was equal to that of the Buddha. For example, in the Mahayana Sutra of Inconceivable Secrets, it says, the group of 6 monks are not actually evil. Their conduct is the same as the Buddha's. There is such a statement. In the Vinaya texts, the group of 6 monks are often spoken ill of, but in the Sutra of Inconceivable Secrets, the group of 6 monks weren't actually that bad, because the practices they engaged in were actually no different from the Tathagata's conduct. If they hadn't acted this way, the Tathagata wouldn't have established such precepts at that time. Even during the Buddha's lifetime, there were monastics whose behavior wasn't very proper. In reality, before the Tathagata, these were merely appearances. Because of these circumstances, certain precepts were established, and through this, the Buddha's Dharma could remain in the world for a long time. This creates such auspicious conditions. This is what we discussed earlier. Perhaps everyone is quite concerned about this matter. We can understand it this way. Now, starting from today, we continue with what the Buddha told Bodhisattva Akashagarbha. Son of the lineage, if we count 80,000 eons as a single day, 80,000 eons is an extremely long time. Taking 80,000 eons as one day, and with this one day, and then 30 of those days are a month, just now 80,000 eons equals one day. With such a day, 30 days make 1 month. 12 of those months are 1 year, so 12 months total 1 year. Calculating with such years after 100,000 billion eons passed, what we just described is truly beyond our imagination. At this time, one would encounter a Buddha. Even using today's calculations, 100,000 million eons is inconceivable. But when we calculate 80,000 eons as one day, meeting the Buddha after such an unimaginably long time is especially inconceivable. Then, after double this same span of time, one would encounter another Buddha. This is truly very difficult to imagine. Now, this Sutra of Great Liberation is even more difficult to encounter than what was just described. To encounter this sutra is truly far beyond the numbers mentioned above. To obtain this sutra, so today everyone might think each of us holding a book is nothing special, but actually if you don't believe in the law of cause and effect, then that's another matter. There's nothing to say. However, if you believe what the Buddha taught about the principles of cause and effect, then each of us holding this book today actually represents the accumulation of virtue over countless lifetimes. Only after generating virtuous intention can we encounter this sutra. It's not that simple. We might think we just happened to come across the Sutra of Great Liberation in some bookstore and bought a copy. We think like this, but the reality is truly not like that. Encountering the Buddhas of the 10 directions and 3 times in reality, when we encounter this sutra, it's no different from encountering the Buddhas of the 3 times. There's a sutra called the Vatsa Sutra, and it says the Buddha must be believed in, sutras must be read, and the path must be studied. It talks about how the Buddha appeared to be ill, and Ananda went to get some milk. When asking for milk, there was a Brahmin who told him to go milk the cows in the pen. The mother cow was very unruly. Later, when Indra learned of this, he manifested in the form of a Brahmin and milked the cow. At this time, he told the mother cow, "The Tathagata has a rheumatic illness. Could you provide him with milk?" Since the Buddha is the teacher of gods and humans, and he spoke of the Buddha's qualities. Later, that mother cow spoke to him in human language, saying, "I can do that, but you can only milk from the front teats. Leave the back ones for my calf." At this time, when the calf heard this, it said, "The Buddha is very difficult to encounter. If it's needed to make offerings to the Buddha, I don't need any. I'll just drink water and eat grass, that's fine." Why was this? In the past, because we didn't hear the Dharma and the Mahayana Dharma, we later fell into the lower realms for 16 eons. Later, Ananda obtained the milk and offered it to the Buddha. Many stories were told about how difficult it is to encounter the Dharma and how difficult it is to meet the Buddha. Such accounts exist in these sutras, and you may have seen them before. So I think when we encounter this sutra, in short, everyone shouldn't think that we once interviewed some university students who were Buddhists, and many said things like, "I happened to meet a master by chance," or "I came across a book by chance." Of course, on the surface it appears to be by chance, but in reality it's the inevitable result of assembled causes and conditions. So in this regard, everyone should also cherish this. In the future, if you have the opportunity to give these books, like the Sutra of Great Liberation, after we finish teaching it all, we'll create a very good Chinese version. This time, I very carefully checked it against the Tibetan, against the Danhuang manuscript, against the Taisho Tripitaka, including different versions from various Tripitakas. I checked them all. This should be considered the most accurate in the world. because the Tibetan version was translated during the early propagation of Buddhism by Vairocana. This should be known. I think in the future, when we have this Buddhist sutra, when you have the opportunity, providing it to others will bring very great merit. It's also a very good method of spreading the Dharma. So it says here, therefore, when intelligent ones adopt this sutra, hold it, read it aloud, recite it, transcribe it, cause others to transcribe it, and teach it to others. So we who have wisdom should uphold and recite this sutra, then transcribe it, and also explain it to those who have the karmic connection. In this way, one will completely purify their wrong views, afflicted ignorance, and contaminated negativities. Regarding these fetters and contaminations, they're explained quite clearly in the upper and lower Abhidharma. I don't need to explain here. Serious negativities will also be eliminated, and they will abide in the field of merit, and they will imbibe limitless worldly offerings. Here, xiao means to digest. One can digest immeasurable offerings from the world. If we regularly recite and uphold this, as well as transcribe it and explain it to others, the afflictions in our mind stream can be eliminated. Moreover, abiding as a field of merit, which means that you become a field of merit. However many people in the world make offerings to you, those offerings can all be completely digested and won't become negative karma. For us monastics, as well as lay practitioners, can we accept offerings from others? Isn't it true that my karmic obscurations are quite heavy, and on top of that, receiving offerings from others, then I'm in trouble? Everyone might be quite afraid. In reality, there's no need to be afraid. If you regularly recite the Sutra of Great Liberation, others' offerings to you will actually be of great benefit. Others' offerings to you won't become karmic obscurations. So generally speaking, Buddhist sutras often say that to accept offerings from others, one have to possess either pure ethics or concentration. These are the requirements. If you haven't attained realization, ethics, or concentration, it's very difficult to digest others' offerings. But if we regularly recite such sutras or regularly uphold them, then others' offerings to you should be acceptable. At this time, Bodhisattva Akashagarbha raised a doubt and he said, Bhagavan, if even the Pratyeka Buddhas don't speak of imbibing worldly offerings, some sutras say that Pratyeka Buddhas have severed the afflictive obscurations as well as some of the cognitive obscurations, but generally speaking, they cannot easily digest others' offerings to them. How is someone like an ordinary being going to imbibe those offerings? How could it be that simple? We ordinary people holding the Sutra of Great Liberation and then accepting offerings, that's a bit unrealistic, isn't it? Even Pratyeka Buddha Aryas find it very difficult to digest. So how could we ordinary worldly people digest them? He raised such a question. Then the Buddha began to answer him, son of the lineage, it isn't the case that Pratyeka Buddhas do not imbibe the offerings. Impossible. Did you mishear or what? That Pratyeka Buddhas cannot digest offerings, there is no such thing. Absolutely no such thing. Perhaps different sutras present different views. Otherwise, Bodhisattva Akashagarbha wouldn't speak carelessly. But the Buddha told him, where would such a thing exist? There's no such thing. Even though they aren't able to explain the Dharma to sentient beings and liberate them in that way, generally when someone becomes a Pratyeka Buddha, as the Mula Madhyamaka Karika explains, they don't liberate sentient beings through Dharma teaching. They are solitary realizers. Whether rhinoceros-like Pratyeka Buddhas or congregating Pratyeka Buddhas, they don't rely on teaching the Dharma. Among congregating Pratyeka Buddhas, some sutras may mention a bit of teaching, but generally it's not their specialty. Solitary realizers enter Samadhi. After arising from Samadhi, they can display great miraculous powers, fierce flames emerging from their bodies, or great rains pouring down, manifesting all sorts of things. What exists disappears, what doesn't exist appears, and so on. They cause ordinary people to generate faith and liberate sentient beings through displaying miraculous transformations. As they have such ability, it is impossible for them not to digest offerings. First, he told Bodhisattva Akashagarbha, solitary realizers can definitely accept offerings. There's no problem with this. At this time, Bodhisattva Akashagarbha wasn't so easily satisfied and continued to ask. Today, with our construction work, our Khenpo Sultrim was a bit displeased displeased and kept criticizing. One of our Dharma friends below kept arguing back with him. Later it seemed to end inconclusively. So you see, Bodhisattva Akashagarbha also kept asking, it's not like this, it's not like that. At this time, Akashagarbha said to the Buddha, Bhagavan, in some sutras it is said that it is inappropriate to dwell together in the same realm as those who have negative views or degenerated ethics. Those who hold wrong views also cannot dwell together. They cannot dwell together in the same country. What's meant by country here is perhaps in one place, in one community. It has this meaning. In Tibetan, the word kang in Tantra, we generally have this as well. In the Sutrayana, certain sutras state that those who break precepts cannot dwell together with monastics, cannot sleep together, cannot eat together, cannot speak together, cannot travel together, and so on. This is also mentioned. However, this issue is explained even more clearly in Tantra, including in texts like the Liberation Through Hearing, especially for those who break tantric vows. They cannot even drink water from the same valley, cannot dwell in one valley. There is such saying. Some sutras also say that those who break precepts and hold wrong views cannot even dwell in the same place, cannot drink water from the same river either. Generally speaking, for example, in this valley, if there's someone who has broken samaya, then the entire valley has been defiled by inauspiciousness, which is not good for everyone. There's such a statement like this. Moreover, whether it's reciting the Pratimoksa, the Posada, confession, or the Pravarana, these are our Sangha's common ritual activities. In these activities, such people are called those who have given up the Arya path. What's meant is that such a person has already fallen from the Sangha. Once someone broken precepts, broken views, in this case, they cannot be included among the Sangha, cannot enter the community of the Sangha. Since that is the case, how is it that here today you say that even those with degenerated ethics will imbibe offerings? Those who break precepts or hold wrong views cannot even share the Sangha's resources, cannot use the cushions, cannot share the Sangha's assembly hall, cannot dine together with the monastics. So in this case, how could these people, just by reciting the Sutra of Great Liberation, have no problems at all and be completely acceptable with everyone else? Bodhisattva Akashagarbha's questions are quite incisive. This is indeed found in Buddhist sutras, especially in Tantra. Indeed, breaking samaya is a very troublesome matter, especially when Vajra brothers and sisters quarrel, or when guru and disciple quarrel. Naturally, there is an inauspicious energy. A few years ago, I translated the biography of Serakandro. She was frequently affected by the inauspiciousness of broken samayas. For example, some of her children died from difficult childbirth in the womb, or some just after birth, because Vajra brothers and sisters didn't get along, or some conflicts between her and her guru. For these reasons, 2 children died, and only 1 remained. In the words of my perfect teacher, there's also a great master who said, I am a great Siddha, and no one can harm me except those who broke samaya. It indicates that inauspicious energy truly exists. Of course, breaking lesser vehicle precepts and views, comparatively speaking, is not that serious. While breaking tantric vows or serious conflicts among Vajra brothers and sisters will make the Dharma protectors unpleasant. Looking at the biographies of previous great masters, many masters in the end passed away or their activities were interrupted because of broken samayas. This phenomenon is truly very common. So sometimes things might seem quite simple to us, but in reality, certain behaviors have a very serious impact on the relationship between master and disciple and between Vajra brothers and sisters. It's still quite serious. Master Vasubandhu's biography says that when he was in Nepal and saw a monk farming, he felt aversion and immediately passed away. Sometimes I think Master Vasubandhu was so learned in both Sutrayana and Tantra, called the second Buddha. Really, when he saw monastic farming, he wouldn't have been that fragile, would he? Yet he immediately recited the Usni Savijaya mantra backwards and then passed away. It's hard to say sometimes. Even Arya Bodhisattvas may manifest passing away under rather special circumstances if it were other people. Oh, a monastic like that. Sometimes I think back then seeing a monastic farming, if Master Vasubandhu saw things now, we often see monastics driving tractors, playing on TikTok. Many are even more than that. Some monastics' behavior nowadays is even more frightening. This really gives rise to many reflections. Although here, when answering below, it's said to be fine. Indeed, some Buddhist sutras do mention the inauspiciousness of breaking precepts and breaking views. For example, among Vajra brothers and sisters, those who frequently quarrel, in some treatises we call them evil friends, because they frequently bring suffering to others. This suffering directly affects ethics, concentration, and wisdom. In this way, in one's own mind stream, wisdom and concentration won't arise, and in others' mind streams there won't be concentration either. So we should keep distance from the evil friends, and beginners also need to distance themselves. Like a teacher, when reaching a certain level, relying on these evil friends might actually help one's practice, but it's very difficult for ordinary people. So generally speaking, compared with those who break precepts, those who break views are even more frightening. They constantly speak of the faults of the guru and the faults of the dharma and dharma friends. Some people, if you just sit with them for a while, a whole bunch of inauspiciousness. Wow, this person is full of inauspiciousness. After returning, you immediately have to light incense and chant mantras, Om Ahum, fumigating with smoke. Truly, those who break views and break conduct will bring a kind of inauspiciousness. We can't say there isn't any. There is. The Bodhisattva Akashagarbha said that some sutras indeed describe this conduct as quite serious. So what exactly is going on? The answer below. Here the Buddha answers using somewhat indirect language to explain the merits and the true meaning of the Sutra of Great Liberation. This situation exists. Then below the Buddha continues, if they imbibe offerings, then they are no different than the Tathagata, just like Arya Arhats and Pratyeka Buddhas. They accept offerings just like the Buddha. In this case, they surpass Arhats and Pratyeka Buddhas. This question is quite serious. Bhagavan, I pray for you to explain the specifics of just that. After I hear it, many sentient beings have the same doubt as I do. I, for my part, having heard your explanation, will teach the same to all sentient beings. I will completely liberate them. Otherwise, it seems there are some contradictions. These sentient beings might find it quite difficult to understand. In the Vinaya text, Flower Garland Commentary, it also says that for those without learning, they enjoy directly like masters. For those with learning, they can enjoy relying on others' offerings. But when enjoying, those who possess concentration and learning, they can be permitted. There is a such saying in the Vinaya Flower Garland Commentary, and when I previously translated Pure Land, Illuminating the Path to Liberation, a commentary on the aspiration of Sukhavati, I think I quoted this scriptural reference. I previously checked the original text of the Flower Garland Commentary. Does it really say this? It does, right? Later, concentration, upholding precepts, and in Tibetan it's concentration and also recitation. Does array mean upholding precepts? It says that, but in the verse doesn't it seem they're upholding precepts? Let's check this later to see what the original text says. I couldn't find the original text of the Flower Garland Commentary's translation at that time. In Tibetan it exists. Below, the Buddha told Bodhisattva Akashagarbha, excellent, excellent, son of the lineage. Since like you, those here today have marvelous love and compassion, you think compassionately about all sentient beings. It is especially wonderful that you have asked this for that reason. Since from my side I will explain the specifics, carefully listen in contemplation. Today, whatever is asked, the Buddha is particularly delighted. Excellent, excellent, very good, son of the lineage, good disciple today, out of compassion for these sentient beings, on behalf of these sentient beings, with such pity for them, you've asked such a good question. Now listen well and think carefully about the meaning and remember it. I will explain these questions to you distinctly. For me, this question is very simple. No worries. There's no problem. I should be able to answer you. Then below it says, son of the lineage. Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas are not known to be the appropriate object for this enumeration of Dharma. Maras, Tarthikas, and ordinary beings are also not abodes for this thought. He said the Sutra of Great Liberation. Because earlier when we discussed, when he asked the question, Pratyeka Buddhas cannot accept. In this case, just by reciting this sutra, just by upholding this sutra, how could it be possible to be completely no difference from the Buddha, far surpassing Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas? Then the Buddha told him, actually the realm and merits of this sutra are not known by Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. If it's not even the realm of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, then for Maras, Tarthikas, and the contemplation of ordinary beings, it's even more impossible. So first, he speaks of the merits of this sutra, which none of us can truly imagine. It is the wisdom of the Buddhas, and it enters into only you. Only the Buddha can know the inconceivable merits of this sutra, and you, Bodhisattva Akashagarbha, can also know some, even though not as much as the Buddha. Then the Buddha used a parable below to answer the question above. Like those who break precepts and break views, if they recite this sutra, can they truly enjoy the faithful offerings? Actually, it said they can. Why can they? The Buddha told Bodhisattva Akashagarbha, son of the lineage, I constantly teach those who practice the Bodhisattva path about generosity and giving. I always teach to those who have generated the mind of awakening about practicing generosity. When speaking of generosity, if someone gives to sentient beings without distinguishing them as good or bad, then it is said that the person perfectly accomplished your accumulation of merit. In the process of giving, for the sentient beings receiving the gift, I don't think I should give to this one, I shouldn't give to that one. For example, giving generously to those I like and not giving to those I don't like, especially to the pitiful or ugly ones, I don't give. I won't discriminate like this, treating all equally, giving equally. In this way, the field of merit is accomplished. Since there's no discrimination in the objects of generosity, it will be accomplished. Actually, the Buddha's giving is in this way, and when we generally make offerings, it's also like this. Offering equally is very important. Give universally and equally, never reject anyone. You will surely meet the noble ones and be liberated through this connection. There's a verse in the Ekottara Agama, and the meaning is when someone makes offerings, giving equally, never discriminating against anyone, one will certainly encounter noble sages and thereby attain liberation through this karmic connection. Previously, I taught about the merits of Manjushwari's hair pagoda on Mount Wutai. Mount Wutai's Vulture Peak Temple held an unrestricted alms assembly. At that time, a woman arrived, leading 2 children and bringing along a small dog. The monastery's manager first gave to her a meal. Then she said, "My child, that child, my little dog hasn't eaten yet. Master, could you give it a meal as well?" The guest monk reluctantly gave. The woman then said, "Great master, I have a child in my belly. Could you give him another meal too?" Since the woman had no money, she offered a lock of her hair as an offering to the 3 jewels. The abbot could no longer tolerate this and chased her away. After chasing her away, she left a bit of hair, didn't she? Later she rose into the sky. The 2 children transformed into 2 celestial youths, and that dog transformed into a lion. Then she said a verse, "Sentient beings study equality, but the mind follows the 10,000 conditions like waves." She spoke about the merits of equal giving, and finally dissolved into emptiness. At that time, the Gus monk felt extremely regretful. It seems happened during the Northern Wei period. Later, this hair was made into a stupa, and when it was reopened during the Ming dynasty, her hair was still there, and different people found different colors. When they saw the hair, it was especially rare. Among those accounts, it also speaks of giving. So the Buddha says, in the process of practicing generosity, whatever offering materials, as long as making offerings equally to all sentient beings, they will all become fields of merit. It's said like this, in this way, performing generosity toward animals will accomplish 100 meritorious good qualities. Performing generosity toward wrongdoers will accomplish 1,000 meritorious good qualities. What this means is, in the process of giving to dogs, wolves, and other animals, one gains 100-fold merit. For Ichantika, one gains 1,000-fold. This is because the latter is human, and offerings made to humans generate greater merit than those made to animals. The Buddha said, "Son of the lineage, when those who have cut the root of virtue die and transmigrate, they go to the class of those who engage in wrong conduct." He firstly explains their circumstances. When those who don't repay others' kindness and are shameless die and transmigrate, they go to the class of animals. If even those with the perfectly matured result of wrong conduct imbibe the offerings of those who have merit, both of these become recipients of offerings, what's the need to mention those beings who read this sutra aloud and uphold it? This is very key. There's no need to mention such a person, so everyone should understand this content. When I was just looking at it, at first I was a bit confused. Why use this? The meaning is, the Buddha says, I frequently make offerings with no discrimination. Even ikantika and animals becomes fields of merit. Among ikantika and animals, ikantika has a bit more merit and animals have a bit less, but they all become fields of merit, even though they have nothing, and they may be the lowest two categories of sentient beings in our world, giving to them. For example, when you give food to little cats and dogs and ikantika, those who hold wrong views, they are fields of merit, and this generosity has merit. Since even people and animals who haven't received or upheld the Sutra of Great Liberation qualify as fields of merit and deserve equal offerings, then on top of this foundation they also uphold this Sutra. Compared to this, those who have broken views or precepts but later uphold this Sutra are even more worthy fields of merit. Then the merit is inconceivable. So from a certain perspective, whether those who break precepts or hold wrong views, those who commit the 5 acts of immediate retribution or slander the true Dharma, if they uphold this sutra, then your giving to them should be without problem. So it says, therefore the might and splendor of this Mahayana Sutra, the all-expansive great liberation, its majestic power is our unimaginable. By this reasoning, the Sutra of Great Liberation's blessings and majestic power are truly inconceivable. Since it completely purifies those who have the negativities of destroying ethics, committing an act of immediate retribution, disparaging the holy Dharma, wrong views, and the afflictions, and it completely eliminates all of these. Moreover, they are also able to imbibe offerings. In Tibet, many people slandered the Dharma, killed, committed all sorts of things when they were young, including some monastics who disrobed. In their life they carry a shadow of regret. In their later years, those people frequently place great importance on the Sutra of Great Liberation, and they continuously recite this for their own confession, or for increasing merit in various ways, or for various reasons. They highly value this sutra. This is very important, I think, for all of us here, regardless. We might not be like those in the beginning of the eon, but certainly in the process of practice or in life, more or less, there would be violations of precepts and breaking of views, even intentionally or unintentionally slandering the true Dharma, the Guru, these things. Indeed, reciting this sutra, frequently making offerings to this sutra, if you really don't have time to recite it, place it on your altar and frequently offer incense and water. In this way, great merit will be accomplished. Nowadays, many people seem to have no confidence in themselves, as they have committed some evil deeds in the past. From then on, they feel they are failures. So nowadays, many young people have no confidence in themselves, no compassion for themselves. Then how can we talk about compassion for others? There's no way. They don't even have confidence to be human. They feel that in this lifetime they've done many bad things that others know about and don't know about. They carry a shadow in their hearts, no courage to face life, no courage to engage in confession, no courage to continue studying the Dharma. Oh, everything is finished for me. Just continue like this, whatever. If I fall, I fall. Some are like this. Actually, this is unreasonable. This is not the choice of the wise. Making mistakes is part of being human. Who can claim to be faultless? There might be some negative karma, but trying your best to rely on such sutras, I think, is still very meaningful. I think that having heard the transmission of the Sutra of Great Liberation before death, which should be meaningful below, Bodhisattva Akashagarbha asked another question. He said, Bhagavan, the Tathagatas are inconceivable. The might and charisma of the all-expansive Great Liberation are also unimaginable. The good qualities of that person who grasps this sutra and reads it aloud are also unimaginable. Bodhisattva Akashagarbha finally understood, I know Bhagavan, and come to this conclusion. Is it the Tathagata's blessings? The Tathagata's merit is inconceivable. This is the first inconceivable. Then the all-expansive Sutra of Great Liberation's majestic power and blessings are also inconceivable. Moreover, the merit of upholding this sutra is also inconceivable. Are there 3 inconceivables? The Buddha replied, it is just like that, son of the lineage. It is just like that. It is just as you have said. They will attain infinite, unimaginable good qualities. Oh, yes, you understand now. Indeed, you now have obtained obtained inconceivable merit. We also frequently use the merit of the Buddha is inconceivable, the merit of the Dharma is inconceivable, the merit of the Sangha is inconceivable. Generating faith in the inconceivable, the ripening results are inconceivable. In our daily recitations, there is also this. Indeed, the merit of the three jewels is inconceivable. The Buddha's wisdom and merit are especially inconceivable. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to expound such sublime sutra. The majestic power and blessings of this sutra are inconceivable. So when we uphold this sutra, the merit we obtain is also truly inconceivable. Buddhist sutras are also quite marvelous. We should think carefully that in this human world, after encountering these sutras, the karma we've created since beginningless time can also have the opportunity to be purified. In this human world, we feel we've failed in many ways, but relying on this sutra, it seems we truly have a kind of self-confidence. We can ignite the fire of hope, which is quite meaningful. Below, at this time, the Buddha told Bodhisattva Mahasattva Akashagarbha, son of the lineage. Below, the Buddha spoke of his own experience. Before encountering this sutra, before he encountered this sutra, he went through many eons without receiving a prophecy. He spoke about his own entire process and experience. I think this part is relatively simple, so we'll just briefly go through the literal meaning. The Buddha said, "First, I recall that in the past there was an eon called the pure eon. During this eon, I made offerings to 92 billion nayutas of Tathagatas. However, because I had violated countless precepts while practicing the lesser vehicle Dharma, for this reason, at that time, none of those Tathagatas gave me a prophecy." He divided it into several. In his first recalled eon, the pure eon, he made offerings to 92 billion nayutas of Buddhas, but because at that time his discipline wasn't pure, the Buddha also violated precepts countless times during his causal ground. So at that time he didn't receive prophecy. This is the name of the first eon. After the pure eon passed, there was an eon named the eon of joyful viewing. During this eon, I made offerings to 4,200,000,000 Tathagatas. These Tathagatas also didn't give him prophecy. Perhaps at that time the Buddha's causal ground was also quite mischievous, not very obedient, and also broke many precepts. So some of our Dharma friends, the day before yesterday, one Dharma friend came to me and said, "I've now recited 1,000,000 times His Holiness's prayer, but I haven't even had one dream. What should I do?" While wiping his nose, he said very sadly, and then I said, "It's fine. Reciting 1,000,000 is nothing. Continue working hard in the future." So you see, the Buddha didn't receive prophecy before so many Buddhas, yet the Buddha still didn't lose hope. This is the second eon. After the eon of joyful viewing just mentioned, the third eon was named the Brahma voice eon. In this eon, Shakyamuni Buddha made offerings to 2,200,000,000 Tathagatas at that time, but these Tathagatas also didn't give him prophecy. After this eon passed, there was another eon named the mind-delighting eon. The Buddha made offerings to 84,000 Tathagatas. However, these Tathagatas didn't give him prophecy either. After the mind-delighting eon just mentioned, there was an eon named the eon of rescuing suffering. The land was called the adorned land, and the Buddha's name at that time was the Tathagata Great Giver, worthy of offerings, perfectly enlightened one. In our Tibetan, all 10 epithets are complete. The Buddha said, "In this eon, I made offerings to 4 billion Tathagatas." He barely heard the name of the Sutra of Great Liberation, just the name of the sutra. By the 5th eon, he only then heard the name of this sutra. Actually, this Sutra of Great Liberation wasn't spoken by Shakyamuni Buddha. It is like the Lotus Sutra, a sutra that appears before many Tathagatas. After he heard the name of this sutra, the afflictive obscurations were severed, forever eliminated. However, I still hadn't actually seen it. This phrase actually means he still hadn't truly seen the content of the sutra. In the Tibetan, it's quite clear. Although he heard the name of this sutra, he still hadn't seen the actual content of the sutra. So at this time, he used all sorts of inconceivable offerings to make offerings to these Tathagatas. Weren't there just 4 billion Tathagatas? Having only heard a sutra name, he hadn't seen the content of the sutra. At this time, he used inconceivable offerings to make offerings. These Tathagatas also didn't give him prophecy. In the eon of rescuing suffering, suffering just mentioned, these Tathagatas didn't give him prophecy. Later, the Buddha told Bodhisattva Akashagarbha, in the past, over many eons, actually, he gives a simple summary here. The Buddha continued to say, in these different eons above, only 5 were mentioned earlier, but actually there were many more eons. In these eons, I made offerings to many Buddhas. As for making offerings, it was also all sorts of so many thousands and millions of Tathagatas, and each time when making offerings to them, he would respect and praise them. Then afflictions were eliminated. He still practiced very diligently. He also possessed the demeanor of Shravakas, still relying on the demeanor of Shravakas, upholding precepts and purely cultivating the pure conduct of celibacy, all the conduct of monastics, then studying generosity, frequently studying generosity in these Tathagatas' teachings, upholding all precepts as well as the 12 dutta practices, eliminating and distancing from pride, anger, and ignorance. Here, greed is absent. In the Tibetan, it's also absent. Also, patience and loving kindness, frequently cultivating patience and compassion, teaching, as I heard, practicing diligently. These dharmas that the Buddha taught him, properly, diligently, according to what these Tathagatas said, he himself practiced diligently. Everything heard, I upheld without loss. Whatever dharma he heard, he never forgot. He would endeavor to uphold and practice it, not letting it be lost. Not like today, hearing one class, forgetting it tomorrow, forgetting it the day after. Not like this. For every class taught before each Tathagata, it's like our advanced study class, recording everything daily. When one day they say no exam, then they don't record and start to enter concentration. Also dwelling alone in solitude, relying on quiet places, entering into concentration. When arising from concentration according to different circumstances, beginning to hear the true Dharma, recite and contemplate. However, those victorious ones still did not prophesy about me. Why was that the case? Actually, this passage is about the entire process of relying on the Tathagatas, his diligent practice process. Although he was like this, concentrating and practicing diligently, hearing and eliminating the 3 poisons, always being very diligent. Some of our practitioners truly are very serious and diligent, but still, he never received prophecy. Why didn't he receive prophecy? On one hand, the realm he upheld in many places was destroyed. The precepts he received before so many Tathagatas were broken. His precepts were also not very pure, and there were many instances of breaking precepts. Also, deeply attached to what? The conduct of the 2 vehicles of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. And it was because I hadn't heard this Mahayana Sutra, the all-expansive Great Liberation. Never heard of sutras like the Sutra of Great Liberation, such Mahayana sutras. So in a certain sense, if we practice the precepts and practices of the lesser vehicle, of course, this is the Buddha's extremely inconceivable conduct. But to truly attain liberation, there are still great difficulties. If one hasn't heard the Mahayana Dharma. I'm now translating the sutra praising the merit of the Mahayana, and in this sutra it says if in our past lives we heard the Mahayana Dharma, there's still quite a difference. The Buddha from each of his pores manifests various lights, then rains down Dharma rain, transmitting this Dharma to sentient beings. When transmitting the Dharma, the Buddha transmits one Dharma, but those who previously heard with lesser vehicle propensities, the Dharma they hear is lesser vehicle Dharma. If previously they heard various vehicles, for these people, the Dharma spoken by the Buddha is Dharma of various vehicles. If previously it was the vehicle of humans and gods, the Dharma spoken by the Buddha is the Dharma of the vehicle of humans and gods. If previously, regarding the Mahayana, the supreme vehicle, they heard about this aspect, then the Dharma spoken by the Buddha is the supreme vehicle. Those who previously slandered the Dharma, this time what they heard, it seems like something. Anyway, I forgot this plot a bit. You can look at it later. If previously they hadn't heard any Dharma, they could only see the Buddha in the assembly. Could only see the Buddha but couldn't hear the Dharma sound. So in our past lives, hearing the Mahayana Dharma is truly very important. Although in this life we may not attain liberation, I think each of us hearing these Mahayana Sutras, in the next life, in the life after that, there will definitely be an opportunity. We'll be saved, right? Below, let me speak a bit more. For this reason, Bodhisattva Mahasattvas should abandon the path of action of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. In the sutra praising the merit of the Mahayana, it says it's better to fall into hell, the animal realm, or the hungry ghost realm, better to save sentient beings in fire pits than to practice for the four fruitions of the lesser vehicle. It speaks quite extensively. So the four fruitions of the lesser vehicle, although are a liberation that severs afflictions, but the meaning is, as we discussed before, if the selfish mind isn't severed, it's the greatest enemy for the Mahayana. So for all of us here, I think we should profoundly comprehend the true teachings of the Mahayana Dharma, just mentioned, distance ourselves from the mind of the two vehicles, cultivate and gather the Mahayana all-expansive sutras. As Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, we should distance ourselves from the two vehicles and the worldly vehicle and definitely cultivate the Mahayana all-expansive sutras. Only then can we receive prophecy. Then below, the Buddha continued to speak these Buddha's names from eon to eon. He continuously speak the Buddha's names that he previously relied on, made offerings to, and accumulated roots of virtue with. Speaking these Buddha names, there's no end, because the Buddha, during his causal ground, indeed relied on so many Buddhas. In the first incalculable eon, he relied on how many Buddhas? In the second incalculable eon, he relied on how many Buddhas? In the third incalculable eon, he relied on how many Buddhas. When we taught other treatises before, we also mentioned this. So it's already inconceivable. One eon, it's impossible to finish speaking. So very many. So we Buddhists shouldn't think, I hear one class today, tomorrow see immediate results, and immediately realize emptiness. We can't think like this. As for the Buddha, over many lifetimes and eons, continuously elevating, accumulating merit, only then could he attain accomplishment. We should also have such long-term aspirations and intentions. That's correct. The Buddha told Bodhisattva Akashagarbha, son of the lineage, after I passed through all this, I met Buddha Dipankara, because after passing through so many inexpressible, countless Buddhas, I met the Tathagata Unchanging Light, and since then, the Tathagata Unchanging Light was teaching immeasurable great assemblies, this Mahayana all-expansive sutra. At this time, the Tathagata Unchanging Light was teaching what? He explained this enumeration of Dharma. That is the Mahayana Sutra, the all-expansive great liberation. At that time, I heard and saw what that Buddha taught. At this time, before the Dipankara Buddha, in today's language, Shakyamuni Buddha, at the very beginning, from which teacher did he hear this? It was from teacher, the Tathagata Unchanging Light. He heard it before him. Who was Shakyamuni Buddha's teacher? It was the Tathagata Unchanging Light. At that time, before the Tathagata Unchanging Light, I heard and also saw the Sutra of Great Liberation. I upheld it and recited it, contemplated its teachings, and attained the patience of non-arising. You see, the Buddha relied on so many Buddhas, yet didn't receive prophecy, didn't attain the patience of non-arising. Later, Buddha Dipankara gave him prophecy. What prophecy did Buddha Dipankara give him? Tathagata Unchanging Light prophesied about me. In the future, you will become the Tathagata, Arhat, a perfectly completed Buddha known as Shakyamuni. In the future, you'll be the perfectly enlightened, worthy of offerings, Shakyamuni Buddha. At that time, after hearing this sutra, so from a certain perspective, of course, the Buddha's activities are boundless, and there are many other circumstances for prophecy, but among all the prophecies, when receiving prophecy before Buddha Dipankara, after hearing this sutra, attaining the patience of non-arising, only then did he receive prophecy. Therefore, son of the lineage, adopt this enumeration of Dharma. If by holding it, reading it aloud, and so on, you will quickly attain the Buddha ground, let alone digesting worldly offerings from humans and gods. So the Buddha told all sons of the lineage, you will definitely uphold the Sutra of Great Liberation. If so, in a very quick time, you can reach Buddhahood, let alone worldly offerings from humans and gods. Offerings from humans and gods are a small matter. However much others offer you, you can eat heartily, it's fine. There's nothing wrong. In a couple of days, during Vajrasattva, they have so many offerings, porridge, ginseng fruit, or whatever else, don't worry. As long as you hold the Sutra of Great Liberation while enjoying them, there's absolutely no problem. That's all for today.
Bandara Banma Sadar